the letters have gotten very close together to show his face, so I just like that effect. So if you can see it, it's better the farther away you go, but it's a nice facade. So, but we'll go in the house now.
Warm, but not as warm as out here.
Okay, that's fine. Oh no. What are you talking about? It feels awesome in here.
Why don't you get a little bit of it? Okay, there's no one in here. This is where Poe's is.
Alright, come on in.
Coming in. Where? She's scared.
Yeah, I've got a very large flashlight. It illuminates a little bit better. We'll just hope it lasts.
Great.
Do we have everybody? Okay. Alright. This is Nevermore, The Madness of Poe, based on, of course, Edgar Allan Poe. Now, Edgar Allan Poe was adopted. He had parents, both of them died, so he was taken in by the Allan family. So he was born Edgar Poe. He was taken in by the Allan family. He was never officially adopted by them. They were kind of his foster parents, but he had a very good bond with them, so he took on their last name, so he became Edgar Allan Poe. Now, he is the first American writer to try and make his living on writing alone. He never did anything else. He never had a side job. He just wrote. He wrote poems, short stories. He wrote what is considered to be the first detective short story. He's kind of credited with that. He moved about the country. He tried going to West Point, which is the military school, but he flunked out because he liked to drink a lot. So he moved back to Baltimore, and at the age of 26, he married his 13-year-old cousin, Virginia. That was okay back in those days. Virginia Clem actually suffered from consumption. It's also known as tuberculosis, and she died at a very young age. That's what they say influenced a lot of Edgar Allan Poe's works, was her death. So Virginia will make an appearance in this house, which I'll tell you about later, but that's very important. Now, the weird thing is, on his death, which was October 7th, 1849, on the 6th, he was found drunk out of his mind in somebody else's clothes in the streets, babbling just a random name. He kept saying Reynolds, Reynolds. Nobody ever knew what that meant, but they just assumed that he had gone mad, and that's what killed him. He actually still to this day does not have a cause of death listed, so we can only assume he went crazy, which is why this house is called Nevermore, The Madness of Poe. Now, Busch Gardens, right down the street, also has an Edgar Allan Poe house. This house has been in the works for 3 years. So we've had it on the back burner for 3 years, so it wasn't like we heard, oh, Busch Gardens is doing a house, let's do one too! It just happened to fit with the event this year. Now, like I said, Poe liked to move around a lot. He failed out of West Point, which was in New York. He had a choice to make. He could go to Boston, or he could go to Baltimore. Baltimore was where he had some family and some money, so he wouldn't have to work as hard to make a living. The person selling him the ticket was Lady Luck. So he decided to go to Baltimore, made the wrong choice, married Virginia, she died, he went crazy, etc., etc. This is his writing studio. If you look at some of the pages around, you can tell that they're actually his works, many of his works as we go on. This character in here is actually Edgar Allan Poe. He's got a bottle in his hand, he's drinking heavily, all that wonderful stuff. This is not Virginia. I'm going to get into the women later, but that is not Virginia. It's just a random picture of a woman, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later because there's a room that I will specifically talk about that. But the next area that we're going to go into is a transition hallway, but it's the first character you actually meet because Poe doesn't really try to scare you. It's Lenore from the poem Lenore, and that's the actually only poem that Edgar Allan Poe wrote with kind of a happy ending, because Lenore goes to like a heaven, she goes to utopia. Most of his other stuff you just die and that's it, the worms get you, all that good stuff. But you run into Lenore here and you're going to walk through pages of his work, and everybody just meet with me in the Telltale Heart Room, which you'll know where we are when we get there. So, but take as many pictures as you want. Oh my God, I hate you.
Insert Lenore here. Aren't these pages crazy? When I was walking.
Oh my God.
This is,
yeah.
This is my favorite. See?
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you guys some more.
No one's in here. This is amazing.
It is amazing.
This is my favorite.
Really cool. I'm just like waiting for somebody to fall off the ceiling.
Alright, if you guys want to move on in, that way we can try and get everybody in.
Just beware the hole in the floor.
Yes, please don't step in the floor where the heart is.
I'll do my best. No promises.
And this room is why we have the flashlights, essentially.
I don't know.
Alright, move in just a little bit more once you grab your pictures, just so everybody can make it. Come on in. You're the next contestant on the Telltale Heart. Alright. There's still some people out there. You guys get your pictures? Cool. Okay. This is the Telltale Heart room. Now, in the story of the Telltale Heart, this man right here kills the man that's where Mark is actually over there. He has a vulture eye, which is essentially a milky eye, and it creeps the narrator out. So he kills him. I mean, that's pretty good reasoning, right? I mean, you need more than that? So he kills him and he chops him up into little pieces, and he buries him in the floorboards. As the story goes on, his guilt takes over and he swears that he can hear the beating of the man's heart. In this room, when it's lit, the heart glows red and you hear the sound of a heartbeat. So it's like doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. It's a really nice sound effect. I really like the repetition because the repetition kind of goes along with the heartbeat and the guilt, because if you feel guilty about something, you keep thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. So this room, the repetition kind of represents that. Now if you notice, this room, because it's so dark, has a ceiling. Most of our haunted houses, the rooms don't have ceilings. We usually put some sort of cloth up there to make it darker, but this room we wanted that repetition effect, so we had to build a ceiling. That being said, the fire codes are very strict and they become more strict every year. So we actually have sprinklers in here. There's one right there and one right there. So, yeah. But also the story on the desk is actually the story of the Telltale Heart. So it's a very nice room. Take your pictures in here. I'm going to be leaving with this light, so everybody that has a flashlight, turn it on, and we'll go into the next room. Okay. Okay, let me get out of the way.
Chicken.
See, I'm still trying to get your pictures.
No, somebody else did. I thought he said it was a chicken. I didn't know.
Alright, because of the stuff in face, I can't see if everybody is back there. Are we still missing some, or is everybody in? Okay. Yes, this is the room. Is that everybody? Okay, sweet. Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. This is the Raven hallway. Basically, once we find that something works here at Universal, we will use it over and over again. This hallway is kind of reminiscent last year if you went through Psychoscarapy, or the year before that if you went through our Dracula house. We like the windows with people jumping out. Now, the characters in this room aren't actually behind the windows, however. They're actually ravens, so they're in a full raven costume, and there's 3 in each window, and they just bend down and they get you. But the best effect in this room is right in front of us, which is this window, this big gothic window with all the ravens behind it. Now, once you walk up here, you'll see there's plastic below us. Anytime you walk onto plastic, just assume there's going to be a water effect. There is a water effect here. It sounds like there's a storm. You see some lightning, we splash some water, and it kind of looks like the window has broken. We use this effect in Twister as well, so that's probably where we stole it from. But when you flash light on water, it looks like glass breaking. So that's how we accomplish this effect, and you will get wet. Most of our houses you'll get wet, I'm sure, as you saw last night when you walked through. But if you guys want to take pictures, we will move on.
bleeding.
Oh,
Go for it.
funny. There's somebody here. Insert person.
Insert manure.
Insert manure here. I like the light.
I don't think I like it. No, well.
Yeah, I don't know. Insert person here.
Yes, insert. There you go.
Oh no.
Good.
Are these the kind of things you have? Yes.
Like
And then
tanks
they
on.
the ones that all around. No, I only did it once. Oh, insert heads up in the area.
And insert another person.
Insert person here. Great.
Insert person behind them to distribute it.
Oh, I think that way.
You okay?
Oh my god. I was like, there are supposed to be people in here.
Just learning on the door.
Is that everybody? Or?
Insert picture.
I think is that everybody? Okay. This, of course, is the Pit and the Pendulum. Now, in this story, it's the Spanish Inquisition, and this prisoner wakes up in a very, very dark room, and he has to use his senses to find out where he is. And it's called the Pit and the Pendulum because there's a pendulum, but when he wakes up at first, there's this very large pit in the middle of the room, which he finds by getting up and walking around the middle of the room, counting his steps and using his senses. We like to do that too here at Universal. We like you to use your senses. We use the sense of smell a lot here. If you walk through the H&R Blood and Guts house, when you go through the Thanksgiving room where Granny's on the table as the turkey, it smells like turkey and burnt flesh a little bit mixed together. So we're all about senses here at Universal. Now in the story, he faints because he doesn't have enough food. He wakes up, there's some food, but he is also tied to a rack with a pendulum swinging down towards him slowly. What he ends up doing is using some of that food. Instead of eating, he puts it on his ropes. The rats come and they eat the ropes away, so he's able to escape the pendulum. Apparently not in ours, but in the real story he does escape. Now as soon as he escapes, he falls into that pit, but he is caught by some people that are saving him from the Spanish Inquisition. So this is a very neat room. This thing does actually swing, but the characters in here are actually Spanish Inquisitors, and they have people's heads and bodies and all of that stuff with them. So we will move on. Oh, and there's a trigger right here if you guys want to see what a trigger looks like. This is an actor-activated trigger, so they'll punch this and there will either be a special effect or a sound effect, depending on what that trigger correlates to. So. Oh God, I'm sorry. I did. No, I walked right through the pit.
Insert person here.
No.
Insert person there.
Person here, yes. Person there.
Insert dead block there. Behind this? Are you serious? I don't know.
Yes.
Yes.
Really? Yeah. How do
Whatever
you
you
do that?
Whatever you see in scale. Some of them are real.
Oh, is it? I should get up there. Have my time.
Oh, this is legit. Not doing it.
This house is awesome.
I'm not
And then
doing
there's
it. Thank you.
she's been there. You're good. You're good. No. Just a good gap. Just a good gap. It really is.
Is there somebody up here?
Yeah, there's.
There's somebody right here.
All right, this room is the Mask of the Red Death. Now the Red Death in the story is basically dizziness, sharp pains, and bleeding from the pores. That's why if you look at the mannequins that are hanging, they kind of look like blood is running out of their pores. Now in the story, Prospero, who is the hero, I guess, nobody really is a hero because everybody dies, but he wants to seclude himself from this Red Death that's sweeping through. Now he's got a little bit of money, so he decides to get all the group of the elite together and throw a masquerade ball. What better way to celebrate the death of the lowly than to have a ball? So he does that. Now, what happens is there comes a man who nobody knows in a costume that they call the Red Death, the Mask of the Red Death. He comes in, he's all in red, and everybody that he speaks to ends up dying. It's basically the story of not being able to outrun death. The Final Destination films have taught us that, if nothing else. But Poe did it first, so the story's about not being able to outrun death. Now, up here is actually the Mask of the Red Death. He kind of looks like, if anybody's seen the musical, The Phantom of the Opera, when he comes in for the masquerade, he is actually in a costume that they call the Mask of the Red Death. So if you've seen that movie, that's what this character kind of looks like. It's a big red costume. And then there are characters back there with the mannequins. If they do not have a partner, there is a character there. So those of you that said you didn't want to go through this house, if you just remember which ones don't have partners, you'll know which ones have a character attached to them. Which is what I do when I walk through the houses for the first time. I find out where all the characters are so that I can just look at them and not be scared. So, but we're gonna move on.
That's not possible.
There's nothing in here. There's no scary. You don't have to.
I like to see
We don't put characters during the day. I promise I don't like to be in your pictures. I just tend to be in the way.
A black cat on the wall.
This is absolutely positively my favorite room in the house. This is called the Portrait Gallery for obvious reasons. When you come into this room, Edgar Allan Poe is right up here. He is yelling, "Virginia! Virginia!" his wife. The large portrait behind him is supposed to be Virginia. After he yells that for a moment, this is what we call a scrim. We used it last year in Legendary Truth. If you walk through that house, there was a hallway where you walk through and it looked like wallpaper, but when it's lit from the back, there's something behind it. Can you, Mark, can you light? Mark's got his flashlight behind it. That is supposed to be the corpse of Virginia back there. Can you guys see that? It's used a lot in the theater, but it's a very, very practical effect, and it's a very nice effect. So we have the corpse of Virginia back there. We have Edgar Allan Poe out here, and then we have two corpse Virginias down on the bottom to get you if you didn't get got by that. The portraits on the wall. Now, Edgar Allan Poe was not a ladies' man. However, women loved him. He was what they call a romantic writer. It was a style. That doesn't mean he wrote romance novels. Other writers in that style are Nathaniel Hawthorne, Washington Irving, and most of their work is very gothic and very dark, but it's a romantic style of writing. So women loved him, and they flocked to him, and they invited him to their parties, to their social events. So this room represents all the women that wanted Edgar Allan Poe in their life. He was not a womanizer, so don't get that impression. He just liked to be wanted, sought after. It was a nice feeling. It's always a nice feeling to have somebody want you, and Edgar liked that feeling because he was making his living on writing, and he was the first one to do that. So I'm sure there weren't a lot before him that thought, okay, yeah, you can do it. So, but I love this room, and this is also the largest room that has ever been built in a tent house. So, yep, it's huge.
that cat don't have no eye. See, it's a little.
It's a Duffy cat.
All right, this is the black cat. There is actually a character right here who is Edgar Allan Poe himself, and he is bricking himself up. Now, in the story of the black cat, he kills his wife, and he puts her in the wall. Well, he unwittingly puts the cat in the wall with her, and he keeps hearing meow, meow. So it's kind of like the telltale heart, and the guilt in the form of the cat keeps coming back. So the creature ended up in the wall. This story has actually been remade a couple times into short TV movies or actual feature films, and it scared the crap out of me as a child. But Edgar Allan Poe's over here. This is a perfect example of what we like to do to scare people. This is a diversion. Edgar Allan Poe's over here bricking himself up into this wall with this cat. Over here is the woman from the story, the wife, with a hatchet in her head. So if you're looking at Poe like, oh, why is he bricking himself up? Then over here, the woman comes to get you from this side. We like to use diversion because it's a really good scare tactic. If you're looking at something, you're not focusing on anything else. So if we can hide somebody somewhere where you can't see them, but they come out while your focus is elsewhere, it's really, really scary. So it's a really good scare tactic. Let's keep moving. This room, luckily, you don't need much light because it's pretty well lit. Alright. No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't lose you because it's possible in these houses. Okay, this is the last scene. It's called The Madness of Poe. So Poe has essentially gone extremely crazy at this point. Now, the style of this room is German expressionistic. It's kind of a style of filmmaking, but you can apply it to other things. If anybody's ever seen Nosferatu or The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, that's the style that this is in. Now, Germany was making films back during the Depression, just like everybody else. They experienced a boom, but just like everybody else, they had no money. So what they would do to make films is they would actually paint things on the set. Instead of having a shadow being lit by light, they would paint a shadow on the wall. Or everything was very geometric, very out of place. As you can see, we've painted ravens on the wall instead of putting actual ravens up there. We also used this style in the Frankenstein house a couple of years ago. So it's a revamp, but it kind of makes you feel like you're going mad because there's ravens on the wall, but they're not really ravens. They're painted there. So also Poe here has a coat that is very geometric. It's got very weird angles. It's not just a regular overcoat. And he's gone extremely crazy. He's flailing around. And at the very end, as you walk out, since it's the finale, we like to get you with as many characters as possible. So there's a Raven, there's a Virginia, there's a couple Lenore, and I think another Edgar as you walk out. So as you walk out, you leave Poe. We're gonna leave in just a minute. While it's still cooler in here than it is outside. Does anybody have any questions about this house? No, we good? Okay, we will move to the Forsaken then.
I like the attention to detail in this house.
Yeah, this house is probably my favorite.